What's up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Mindset Cafe podcast. It's your boy, Devin. And like always, we're here to help you on your journey, both entrepreneurial and in that mindset and personal development. And today we have a special guest, John Hamilton. He is the owner of Brooks Moving Company. He is also co-owner in Tighten Up Training, which we'll dive into in a little bit, as well as he is an Air Force veteran. So I just want to thank you so much, John, for coming on today.
Awesome, Devin. Thank you so much for having me, man. I'm really excited.
So let's just dive straight into it. So from your entrepreneurial experience, how did you get into the entrepreneurial space moving from the Air Force?
Oh man, that's a great question. So, for a long time growing up, I was always I was always very interested in business. I enjoyed business, and I always wanted to figure out how to kind of generate that passive income and position myself for later on in life. Not working like my parents, at 40, 50, 60 years old, trying to get the last dime. So, I've always had a huge interest in business. I always knew in the back of my mind that it was something that I wanted. And I think the Air Force was kind of one of those last ditch efforts when stuff went a little bit sideways coming out of college. And I'm grateful for the opportunity, man. It's taught me a lot. It laid a foundation. And believe it or not, the military is really structured like a business. So I was able to take the organizational structure and all these things and imply them. And so it was a great path. It's a fun path.
What led you to joining the military? I mean, you said you just kind of mentioned that you went to college and then you joined the Air Force. Like, what was that like?
I did, yeah. So I like to phrase it as a series of unfortunate events. so
Okay.
I went to college. I was, to be completely honest, my dad was a doctor. I always felt like it was something I had to follow, but I did have a passion for medicine. I enjoyed it. I ended up getting my EMT. I enjoyed that type of stuff. And I guess a year and a half, 2 years into college, I sat down with my dad and I was like, yeah, I think I want to go the doctor route. It's time to make that decision. And he was like, John, I just don't think that this is the lifestyle that you want. Like, I know how you are. I know how type A you are. You like fast pace. And he's like, honestly, I don't suggest it. He's like, you don't want to be tied to a beeper for your entire life. You don't want to get in phone calls in the middle of the night, or on vacation when you're trying to spend time with your family. I think you could find something better, man. So I really took that to heart, and I was enjoying the education that I was getting because it was, it was a lot of medical, type stuff. So finally, I took a back seat, and I was like, you know what? Let me dive further into what I'm going to be doing. And so I was like, it's time to make a turn. So I made a turn. I pivoted, and I actually jumped into school to work on a fire science background or bachelor's degree, while also going to fire school. So I went the fire school route. Really actually loved that. It was a good time, a lot of camaraderie, a lot of great guys. And this was like 2000, I guess, seven timeframe, 2008. And right as I graduated, they had a huge hiring freeze throughout the state of Florida. So I was stuck in this position where I had I had my EMT, I had my paramedic, or no, I didn't have my paramedic at the time, excuse me, but I had my firefighter one and two, had all the necessary credentials, but I was just another guy in the pool with no credibility, trying to scrape for a job. And, I saw it as a long process and not something that I could jump into immediately. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm going. I'm bartending. I'm, waiting tables. I was like 20, 19 years old, 20 years old, trying to still figure out life. And man, one day I woke up, I went into work, and they were just like, hey, we just don't need you. And I never got a reason why I was fired. I don't know if it was like a business decision, if business was dying down, what it was. I got laid off. And so I was waiting tables at Carrabba's. And I was like, all right, well, no big deal. I'll go to my bartending job / barback job. And, and this was in Orlando. I'll show up and I'll be fine. If I'll figure this out. So I went to my job that night. This is a matter of like a day or two. And I show up and ready to go through the meeting. And then the manager's like, hey man, I need to talk to you. Get pulled aside, fires me. And I'm like, dude, what is going on right now? Like I'm 19 years old. I got freaking, I mean, at the time, probably $2,500, $3,000 in bills, with rent, living alone, stuff like that. I'm freaking out. No money saved. And I called my dad and I was like, dude, I think it's time. I've always wanted to join the military. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. It's the first time in my life. I'm alone and I got bills to pay. And he's like, well, if that's what you want to do, then you need to do it. So I packed all my shit. I moved back in with my mom. I was like, hey, I'm saved my room. So I sold literally everything I had. I put some stuff in a storage unit that my mom had, and I brought my motorcycle home, and I started going around to the recruiter's office. And so from there, long story short, I could go into it, but I walked into all the offices, started with the Army, went to the Marines, went to the Navy, went to the Coast Guard. And actually, the Coast Guard was the first one that I pursued because I wanted to be a Coast Guard rescue swimmer. And, it was like the cool thing was helicopters and medicine. That's what I was passionate about. And so I walked in there and I'd racked up, I don't know, $10,000, $15,000 in bills from college and stuff like this. And the recruiter's like, hey man, like you're going to need a financial waiver. We can't get you in at 19 years old with $15,000 in debt. And I was like, what am I doing? And what am I doing wrong with my life right now? I should be in this situation. Everybody should be in this situation at my age. Um, so yeah, man, I went around, spoke with the Army, talked to the recruiter there. He told me I could be a 68 whiskey, which was a flight medic. And I was like, sweet, let's do it. So I sign up, start signing the dotted line, call my dad on the way home. And I'm like, hey, I signed up to be a 68 whiskey. I'm going to be a flight medic. And my dad was like, you're an idiot. Oh, whatever I do, I can't make this guy happy. So I go back to the recruiter. I'm like, hey man, before we submit this paperwork, I just need to get some stuff straight in my life. I need to figure out that this is the right decision. He's like, all right, no problem. So next day I walk in, I go to the Air Force recruitment office, walk in, there's this picture of this guy on the wall. He's holding his fins in his hand. He's got a backpack on. He's all in blacked out gear, a helicopter in the background on the beach. And I was like, what is that? I want to do that. And the recruiter's like, oh man, that's pararescue. It's one of the hardest things to do in the Air Force. All right, man, whatever. Sign me up. It's the Air Force, right? So long story short, I shipped off to basic training about 6 months later. But I remember, never forget that night I went home and YouTube was kind of up and coming then as 08, 09. And I jump on YouTube and I'm like, all right, pararescue, what is this? And I start seeing the documentaries and I'm like, holy shit, what did I just get myself into? I didn't know it was special operations. I didn't know that there was 2 years of training. I didn't know all this crazy shit that I had to do. But you know what? I buckled down. I told myself I was going to do it and pushed myself through it. And I made the leap, man. Spent 13 years there, did multiple combat deployments, Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria. And then later on in my career, I ended up pursuing a special mission unit. We always hear about the cool units in the military, but you never, nobody advertises or talks about them. So I had the blessing from my leadership that I was able to go up and assess for a unit up in North Carolina and spent the last portion of my career up there, man. And it was fun. It was fun. I enjoyed it. But 2013, I ended up in Afghanistan, had some issues, was riding out some injuries, was real close to explosions. And so I figured it was time to retire. I had a kid on the way. I loved it, but it was just, I was becoming more of a liability than an asset. So uh, I exited and on my way out, got into real estate. And here I am now owning a moving company and other things.
Man, that's awesome. It's crazy when you think Air Force, immediately you think like Top Gun, you know. Uh, but honestly, it's really cool to think that even though your dad, told you that the doctor route wasn't going to be for you, and that, which is a huge thing because as kids, we kind of idolize our dads to a degree, right? Um, in my own experience, like my dad was LEPD, and so as a kid to growing up, I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. Like I'm gonna be a police officer and go that route. And it came time, and my dad did the same thing. He's like, look, honestly, I just don't think this is what you want to do. And
Yeah.
then we had a talk. I actually did the whole, I went through and got my EMT, and I was going to go the fire route as well. And then Los Angeles had the hiring freeze. And I also was starting my own business at the time and realized, I was like, man, I think I'm doing this because it's the comfortable job, and it's, everyone kind of just goes the route that's going to be the most comfortable. But I was like, I really think I could do this entrepreneurial thing, you know?
Yeah.
And so similar to your journey, it's crazy because you start off one way, or you think you have your life planned out, and a series of unfortunate events, like you said, could happen. A similar thing happened to me, getting let go of a few things, and it felt like my whole world was coming down. And that can lead to almost the real journey that you're on. Because if those events didn't happen, then you wouldn't be sitting here and we wouldn't be talking right now, and you wouldn't be starting up Titan training, which is, going to be an amazing thing once it launches. Right. So those unfortunate events were truly a fortunate event in your life. Right.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because, I talk to people all the time, especially, in the coaching space and in the moving industry, and they want to know my story. And I tell them like, well, that sucks. And I'm like, you know what, man, I'm grateful for every single thing that happens in my life. I'm grateful for every opportunity that I'm given, whether I fail or whether I succeed, because failure to me is not a failure. It's a point in life to learn and to grow. And if you don't learn from that, then what are you doing? One of my favorite sayings is a wise man learns from his own, or a smart man learns from his own mistakes, and a wise man learns from the mistakes of others. So my favorite thing was always, implementing what I learned, and then positioning myself with people around me that have failed, that are bigger than me and better than me, and that, I can learn from their mistakes and not do that stuff. Um, Sometimes we might think that we're a little smarter than them, but we you slowly learn that as you get older and more mature, and you start to lose your ego and you work on yourself. That it's a strong thing that can be harnessed to help you grow as a person, as a business owner, as a leader, and you get to help and you get to grow people together, and it's cool, man. It's fun.
No, and I think like a huge piece that you just said too was losing that ego and having a sense of humility, um, and realizing that you don't know everything, that you're not your best that you can be, and learning the biggest part right there was, learning from not only your mistakes, but from the mistakes of others. And that's why, hiring a mentor or hiring a coach, like that's what, launching my franchise company, like I thought I need a mentor, and not a mentor that, just preaches and, reads from a textbook and starts teaching it. But we hired a mentor that actually launched a franchise company as well. He already did all those mistakes. So like you said, I value his time that he made those mistakes and the mistakes he made, so I don't have to make them. And, it's having that sense of humility as you grow up and work on yourself is huge. And if you can't lose your ego, you're only stunting your growth, right? And that goes in more than just entrepreneurial. Like you had the sense of humility to realize that you in the Air Force were more of a liability than an asset, which is huge because I'm sure that, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but that was probably a huge part of your identity at the time.
Yes, absolutely. And it was soul crushing, man. Like it was I was at the peak of my career. I was at the highest point in any military, installation and position that you could be in, as far as, the tier one level of special operations. And it was life crushing. It really was. I was so lost for a good amount of time that I was really trying to find myself and what I was going to do. Um, and I realized that, with the people that I had around me, that I really enjoyed helping people, and that's what I figured that business would do for me. It's bringing business to life, being a leader, and helping improve other people's lives. And I think one of my favorite people, if you look at it, Tommy Mello, man, he that's what he strives to do. Is if you've ever read his book Elevate, that's what he talks about, is having a company culture that, in the blue collar world, that you can really change people's lives and give them an opportunity to make money that they never thought that they could make, by bringing the right people in and having the right leader in the spot that believes in them, that trusts in them, that gives them the faith that they can do something good in life. And a lot of times I find that my employees never had that growing up. They never had the support from their family members. Maybe they didn't even have a family, dad, mom, whatever it might have been. So man, it's just so fulfilling and so cool to on this journey to watch other people excel, as we continue to grow. And that's really what harnessed my, the things that I want to do with starting with the Tighten Up training program with the moving industry, is I saw these gaps that needed to be filled, man, and we're trying to fill them.
No, that's honestly that's awesome. And I think from what you're saying, we have at least one of the same core values, which is always nice to resonate with, which is having a positive impact, right? We're here to have a positive impact in different, assets and ways, but changing the lives of others and bettering their lives and leaving that ripple effect in their lives is so fulfilling. And it's awesome to hear that that's what you're doing with, Tighten Up, and that's what you're doing with your moving company and stuff. I want to rewind real quick with that though, because you kind of skipped over it, and I think this would be a kind of a crucial thing to talk about. Going back into that personal identity shift from, um, Air Force to not knowing what you're going to do to then owning a moving company. How did you and what did you face, trying to find yourself again?
So as I was exiting the military, I'd say the last 2 years. Well, I take that back. I always knew that real estate was kind of a good play, especially in the military. I got full time. I have no time to focus on anything else. So as I had opportunities to move from base to base, I would buy a house. I'd put a rent, and then I would have to PCS 2 years later, 4 years later, whatever it is. So I'd put a renter in it, and then I'd go to the next place and I'd buy a house, and which I'm very grateful. Again, I had the opportunity to do that through the VA loan, and so as I was exiting, I had this passion for real estate. I was loving it, and so I was buying, I was doing fix and flips, I was doing stuff like that, and finally I realized that hey, I need to get into this game more. So I got my real estate license. And when I got my real estate license, I was able to, buy basically properties at wholesale value or whatever it might have been. And I thought the moving industry, adding that to my, I guess, a different vertical of business would be cool when I was exiting. So, I ended up purchasing the company because I knew from a young age that I wanted to be a business owner. I wanted to figure out I always had that entrepreneurial drive. And so it was tough, man. It was tough because I learned a lot of things as a new leader in the military and as I grew up, and coming from the culture of, almost hazing, to actually going to a place where I wasn't hazed, I was mentored, and realizing the positives and the negatives of both sides, and really how productive the things are. Um, it was a switch just went off for me, and I was like, man, like this entrepreneurial thing that I'm aspiring for in the back of my head that I just couldn't put my finger on what I wanted to do. This is now giving me an opportunity to fulfill that. Um, and man, I see it so much from guys that exit the military that they just can't find the sense of fulfillment anymore. Jumping out of airplanes, shooting guns every day, being around the bros. The last thing you're worried about is money because you know what your check's going to be. You know what you're doing every single day. You don't overreach yourself, and you have all these opportunities. When you're on deployment, you're stacking cash. When you're going on TDY, which is like a extended, training session somewhere in a different place of the country or the world or whatever it is, you're able to stack cash because you're getting paid to do this stuff. Not that the military pays great, but you learn to live within your means, and when you're going to get a little extra bonus. So really, it was a great opportunity getting out that I was able to find that, and now I was able to conquer something else in life that I wanted to do, and coming into the military. I'll be honest, man. Growing up, I never had the self confidence to ever grow up and be like, man, I'm going to be in special operations. I always had this self doubt in my mind. But I think through the process, I was able to build the resiliency and the faith and the trust in myself. And just knowing that, hey, I just trained for 6 months before I left for the military. Um, and if I've been bragging, not bragging, but everyone's asking me where I'm going, what I'm doing, I can't let these people down now. I can't quit because if I do, um, it was a weird point, man. Like you said, you dealt with the hiring freeze. I dealt with the hiring freeze. The military was overstaffed, so if you were like quitting in the pipelines in the special operations career fields, you're getting pushed out of the military completely. Um, so really, a lot of it was just the mindset that I was able to have and push through that. And I built that through my career. And when I got out, it was like, all right, cool. I have this new, fresh mindset. I'm back in the real world. How do I make an impact? How do I pursue something else that that I want to reach now because I've reached the pinnacle of my career at 29 years old. How do I keep going up? And it's crazy. I actually had a podcast with one of my old operational psychologists recently, and the hardest thing getting out of the military is finding that sense of purpose again, because you get to this pinnacle and you go, okay, I'm here, but where is this sense of fulfillment? Where is this sense of excitement? Like, I thought once I got here, man, I'm going to be so fulfilled. And it's the same way with business. It's the same way with money, man. Like, you end up, oh, I just made $1 million. That's cool. I don't feel any different. What impact am I having? Like, now we got to switch gears again to figure out what drives us, what fulfills us. Man, I could go on and on. It's just been a crazy journey. And really, it's on you and how you think and how you believe in yourself, which has really got me where I am.
Wow. So when you left the military, you worked with a psychologist, to transition
I did.
into.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So I had an operational psychologist while I was in. It was really cool, man. Like where I was, we had operational psychologists, we had physical therapists, we had dietitians, we had strength coaches. I mean, we had it all. It was like professional athlete level, cold plunges and hot tubs and saunas and stretching. And, we did it all. And getting out of the military, I was grateful. I had the opportunity to work with them to help me, restructure and reframe my mindset as I was going out into the real world, and continue to be fulfilled and not fall into the state of depression, anxiety, and all the things that you see guys go through when they exit. And believing in myself and starting a business and bringing the same mentality to the business that I had every day in special operations, it's life changing. It's life changing, and that's what I told guys: is when you get out, you have to find something you're passionate to do, because if you don't, you're going to be stuck in this cycle of misery.
No, that's awesome. I mean, it's really cool that you had the, again, sense of humility to know that working with a psychologist, after the fact, even though, I mean, do you think that you worked with a psychologist or afterwards because you had exposure to it while you were, in service? Or if you didn't have that same exposure, do you think you would have seeked a psychologist afterwards?
I don't, man. A lot of guys in the military, and I was guilty of it as well, is that we suffer from this. Again, I think it's ego, right? You don't want to go in and you don't want to tell people your feelings. You don't want to tell people how you're sad or you're anxious or you're depressed or whatever it is. Um, and it's called operator syndrome. And it's truly a dysfunction of your endocrine system from all the high intensity, high stress, all the activities that you do in the military, jumping out of planes, shooting guns and gunfights, all this stuff. And guys come back and they just bottle it up and bottle it up and bottle it up. And they don't want to speak to people because they're too cool. Their ego's too high. You can't touch me. I'm a barrel chested freedom fighter. But to me, a real man is the one who's able to harness that and grow from it and talk about it. And I'm trying to figure out how to frame this for you, but they say that you know coming back from war, essentially you have blood on your hands, right? If you don't cleanse yourself of that blood on your hands, you're just going to spread it to everybody around you. And so that's why it was so important for me to go back and sit down and talk to somebody and unpack some of the things that I had done and I had seen, to make myself process things better, to understand myself and learn more of myself. And for me, it was really a journey of like perfecting my mindset and self mastery. Really, is what I call it. Right? How do I self master? And I think it comes with a lot of introspection. I think it comes with a lot of discussion, and it boils down to having the humility to open up and talk about it.
I honestly, I agree, and I think that's huge. And I was, I'm just sure you're in the same way. But I wish more people would do that and let go of your ego a little bit, and realize that you don't have to be Mr. Tough Guy or Mr. Tough Girl all the time, right? There's a time and place for that, and there's almost like a professional athlete, like you said, right? There's an identity to it, and if you're a Laker fan, or just because I'm gonna reference Kobe, but having like the Kobe identity or like the Black Mamba identity, right? And that's how
Yep.
you should be able to live your lives, especially as men and as fathers. I have a daughter, so it's like when I'm around her, I'm
Hmm.
a lot different than if I'm around my team, my staff. If I'm doing anything else, if I'm in the gym, completely different persona, right?
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where you can switch, and you don't have to be Mr. Tough Guy or Mr. Cool Guy all the time. And also, when you're coming out of something as serious and life changing as the military and any field of it, it's one of those things where that, like you said, everything can just compile and compact on top of each other until it's gonna explode at one point. Like, you can't just jam pack something that tight. Um,
Right.
so that's honestly, I commend you for that and having that humility. What let's go back. You said that your moving company was actually an additional revenue stream, or um, a supplement to your real estate. What was that realization that there's other ways to make money, or even other companies to form to basically add to your actual business?
Man, that's a great question, because the further and further I get into business, the more opportunity presents itself. But with this podcast, obviously, the Mindset Cafe, life's about mindset, man. It really is. You have to be an opportunist. You have to be a realist. And every single thing that I see or I do or I hear, instead of being like, no, we can't do that, I try to pull out like, what's the opportunity here? How do I bring this into my life? How do I bring this into my business? How do I bring this in to supplement something and make it better? Whether it's income, whether it's whatever it presents itself in life. Um, so I saw the opportunity to add that to the real estate side and grow. Um, but life's about perception. And if you're perceiving things as a threat, or if you're perceiving things as, oh, I can't do that, you got to believe in yourself and figure out how to position yourself to fulfill the things you want to do.
No, that's exactly. So would you think, talking about mindset, do you think that you have to keep your mind open and looking for opportunity to seek out opportunity?
I think I read it in a book the other day, and I don't remember who said it, but it's like the red car theory, right?
Hmm.
Um, it's one of those things that when you start processing things in a manner that you're looking for opportunities, there you're going to start seeing them everywhere. If you're a person that's negative and you're waking up and you're not having gratitude, you're not doing all these things that change your perception of life and how great life really is. You don't process it correctly, and you see like, oh, that's just a hindrance, or that's oh, no, I would never do that, or whatever it is. The red car theory is, you go out, you want to buy a red car. Now when you're driving around, every time you pull in somewhere, you're like, oh, red car, red car, red car, red car. And that's so applicable, because when your brain is trained that way, you wake up in the morning and you start thinking about these things and you start having conversations with people, you start finding these little links that you'll be like, okay, yeah, that makes sense here. I can implement that, or I can change that, or that's a business opportunity, or with this business opportunity, I can add this in, which is working either in parallel with my business or works exactly with my business. Um, so it's you got to grow. You have to work on your own mindset in order to find that and not be a negative person.
No, definitely. And I think I like the perception thing because I say that as well. Life is all about perception, right? Life is in the world isn't the world. The world is basically how you see it, and how you see it is your own perception of it. And so if you can change your perception, you can change your world essentially, right? So if you're looking at everything as woe is me and man, everything is going wrong in my life, well then everything that does present itself is going to seem like it's something else that's wrong, right? Versus
Hmm.
if you take that and like we talked about earlier, you extract the lesson, you learn from it, you learn from other people making mistakes. Now you're seeing everything as lessons and opportunities to grow, and all of a sudden things just start popping up. um, who like what part of, or maybe you were doing it in the military, were you reading and doing other personal development stuff, but besides working out, because I'm sure you were physically active in the military and stuff, but were you doing that during the military, or was that something that you kind of added in afterwards?
Um, I think more towards the end of my career when I got around elite people, elite individuals, and I had access to those things, I started realizing how important it really is. Again, because uh, I think I was full of ego in high school, but I didn't truly believe in myself. I was a good football player, I was a good wrestler, but I still felt like I lacked the faith in myself to go do something hard. Um, so when I was around the people that thought like that and acted that way, it inspired me to learn more about myself and to learn more about how I can wire my brain to do whatever the hell you want to. Whether it's be super successful or be a super successful drug addict. You know what I mean? Like it's the same DNA that's in your body, because if you really think about it, I forget what the gene's called, but um, think about a crackhead, a desperate crackhead, right? How resourceful are they to go find crack?
Yeah, very.
Dude, they'll sell the shoes off their feet to go get crack. It's the same thing as a business owner. You have to be that resourceful in order to get yourself through the hard times. Whether it's not paying yourself, whether it's taking money out of your own pocket, whatever it is, firing your entire staff and doing it yourself, like you find out these things to be resourceful. And it's funny because you see these people coming from this one extreme to the other that are ex drug addicts and being extremely successful in business. And it's the same drive and the same gene, but I was able to learn that through the people I was around, the books that I read, and the access to, like you said, psychologists. And then, I got out, start listening to more and more podcasts. I got into business. I start being in rooms with people that were, had 17, 15, $20 million businesses. Shit, the last event I was just at, one of the biggest, one of the big industry leaders, $47 million moving company nationwide, and I'm in there in the same room with this guy. It's so powerful when you're able to be in that room and learn from those people, um, that you just got to shut up. You just got to listen. And at the end of the day, that's the subject matter expert. And you take what you can learn from them and build that relationship with them and continue to talk to them and add value to their life. Because if you're able to add value to their life, dude, those guys will give the shirt off their back to help you. Like, oh, I remember when I was there, like, let me help you out. So,
No,
but yeah, long-winded to say, I think that being around the right people, learning what I did in the military, shaped me to exit and be where I'm at now.
that's that's perfect. I mean, that's awesome that you realized, and I think that young entrepreneurs especially need to realize that when you're trying to get around bigger individuals in either your industry or in business, you have to bring value to them as well, right? You
Yes.
can't just expect to learn or to get into their circle. Sometimes you got to pay your dues, and most people want to help. Majority of, especially the more successful you get, the more you want to kind of pay it forward and bring people up. But at the same
Hmm.
time, like it kind of goes both ways. Like I want to see someone that has that drive, right? And how what better way to see someone that has that drive than someone trying to bring value to my life without me telling them what to do, right? That's huge that you know that, and you mentioned that because it's crucial. you know um I want to touch back on the crackhead little analogy. Have you heard of Eric Thomas?
I have not.
Okay, so he has a little saying as well. Basically, there was a preacher, and there was a young man basically, talking to him and saying, I want to be successful. He's like, you want to be successful? Meet me out on the beach tomorrow at 4 a.m. And he's like, okay, no problem. The kid shows up on the beach, all suit and tie, ready to go. He's like, man, he has me out here at 4 a.m. Like, I just want to be successful. He's like, all right, walk out into the water. He's like, he looks at the guy. He's like, what? I'm in a suit and tie. Like, what? He's like, you want to be successful? Walk out into the water. He walks out, gets his pants wet. And he's like, a little farther. He's like, man, this dude's crazy. He's thinking about going back in. And he's like, walk a little further. Now he's about neck level. And the preacher dunks him under the water and holds him in, right? Holds him. He's starting to struggle to breathe. And he lets him up. And he takes a huge breath of air. And he's like, what were you thinking about when you're underwater? He was like, to breathe. He's like, did anything else matter? He's like, no. He's like, when you want to succeed as bad as you wanted to breathe, then you will be successful. Right.
Right. Right. It's the same exact principle. I love it. I love it.
So I think that's huge. And it truly is thing like you're going to face obstacles. You're going to face challenges in business, in relationships, in, your own self, and realizing that, that's natural. And as long as you can change your perception and realize that this is a lesson and you're going to come out of this fire stronger than you went in, you can start to change your view in your world, and opportunities will start to present themselves, right?
Yeah. And I think that's a very important fact, that for young entrepreneurs that are coming into it is they think that, oh, I'm going to get rich quick. Man, a real business, people, I laugh when people are like, and I don't want to strike a chord with anybody, but real estate agents. Oh, I'm in business. Like, well, at the end of the day, you don't have any overhead. You're not managing employees. Most of them aren't managing employees. You aren't struggling to survive to pay not only your business income, your employees make a profit, and now you were worried about your own personal finances to take care of, right? Um, and everybody thinks like, oh man, I'm going to sell this thing, I'm going to do this thing, I'm going to get rich quick, and it's just not the case. It's like a hockey stick. You suck it up, you suck it up, you suck it up, and 2-3 years into business, you're like, man, I'm so defeated. I just want to quit. I want to quit. Like, I'm not making the money. Whatever it is, I keep getting hit, whether it's insurance or accidents or losing this or losing that, or your best employee quits, or it's relevant in so many different things, but um, one of my good buddies, Reagan, wrote a book that said, keep going. Because no matter what, you just got to push through it. You got to figure out where you're deficient. You have to be resourceful, and you have to push through it, because eventually you're learning from every scenario that you go through. Whether it's you're short on cash, whether it's you lose your best employee, whether business slows down or it speeds up and you grow too fast, or there's so many different scenarios, and it's just like every year, if you find yourself getting a little better and a little better and a little better, then finally, like, one day you hit speed and you take off, and then it's all up from there. And it's funny because I think a lot of people look at business owners that are in this spot that are high level CEOs, and they're like, man, I just want to get in the room with them, and I want to do this and that. How do we how do I help them? But at the end of the day, it's like, I think a lot of people talk about it too, is there's money doesn't bring fulfillment as much as people want to say it does. It doesn't. And the gratitude or the fulfillment comes from the ability from these high level CEOs to want to help people, and to bring them up and to share with them what they've learned through life is invaluable. And it's their new way of realizing, like, man, I've got tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of millions of dollars. It hasn't done shit for me, you know? But now I'm able to help people. Now I see people grow. Now I see people coming up with me. And now you're no longer lonely at the top. Now you get to celebrate your wins. Now you get to grow together. Now you get to freaking enjoy life together, because you built up the people around you that you want to be with. So it's a really cool journey.
No, definitely. And like you said, being an entrepreneur is not a get rich quick thing. And, you know, fast money is not good money. It comes in fast and it goes out just as fast. And I've never heard the hockey stick analogy, but I like that one because that is true, right? You're going along this line and you're overcoming obstacle after obstacle, and it seems like it's a never ending journey of just fighting for your life, your employees, finances and their incomes, and you have so many things on the plate. And it's one of those things where you're being forged by the fire, because you can go hang out and learn from a CEO that runs a billion-dollar company, but you don't have the skills, the mindset, or the attitude or personality to deal with $1 billion problems, right?
Right.
So you have to go along that line before hitting those spikes, and those spikes happen at each level, right? The main thing
Mm-hmm.
is just not giving up. Like, you can't fail if you don't give up. You just have to
Right.
be that hard-headed and realize that there is a solution to this problem. You just have to find it, right? Um, before wrapping up, I like to ask people, today is hypothetically your last day on earth, right? You have a piece of paper. You get to write down one thing, one piece of advice, basically to leave with all of your knowledge and all your experience. What would that knowledge that you would leave to the world be?
The biggest, I think the biggest piece of advice that I can give anybody that's young is kill the ego, because at the end of the day, nobody cares how cool you are. But learn from every single thing that you do in life and be grateful that you had the opportunity, whether it's positive or negative, that you were able to go through that and learn from it. Because at some point in life, you're going to look back, you're going to realize what you learned from that position that you were in, and you're going to be able to apply it, and it's going to be so much easier to get through. And it's applicable in life, it's applicable in business, and it's applicable in any aspect of relationships. Like I failed my first marriage, right? But people are like, "Oh, don't you regret that?" Like, hell no, no. You know why? Because I grew 1,000 times from being in that relationship, and now my marriage is the best thing I could ever possibly want or have. Like, my marriage is amazing. I have a beautiful wife, I have beautiful kids, and I learned so much that now I'm in a position where I'm just grateful. I'm grateful for the opportunities. I'm grateful for everything that I have every single day, and I'm grateful for the situations and circumstances that I get to learn from every day.
Wow, that's pure gold right there. Where can people
Mhm.
connect with you and learn more about, what you're doing with Tighten Up training and everything that you guys are going to be launching soon?
Yeah. So my Instagram handle is at invested in real estate. John Hamilton on Facebook. Tighten Up Training, if you guys are following. Tighten Up Training's more for the moving industry, but we are busting off into the service industry side of things. So, any of the blue collar type work, helping industry leaders grow their business, grow their life, and be successful.
That's awesome. Hey, John, honestly, I want to thank you so much for taking the time out. I know you guys got a lot of filming to do today at Tighten Up Training. So thank you so much for coming on. And guys, please like and share the show with a friend. And until next time, see you guys later. Peace.
Thanks, Devin.